Radio 3.
You're listening to Brunch with me, Noreen Mayer, on this Thursday morning. Now, let's turn to our next guest and topic of today. In the next 20 minutes or so, we're talking about navigating adolescence in the digital age. Now, as you know, we've been through this. Adolescence is really a pivotal time filled with challenges and also discoveries. But in recent years, young men have found themselves increasingly drawn to the manosphere, which is an online ecosystem that often promotes controversial views on masculinity. Now, today we're going to be chatting with clinical psychologist Dr. Quratulain Zaidi, who will help us navigate the challenges faced by today's teenagers, as highlighted in the Netflix miniseries Adolescence. Welcome back on the program, Dr. Zaidi. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Noreen, for having me.
An important topic for today. I realized as I sent over the questions, it was sort of diving straight into the challenges that teenagers face. But before we get to that, I'd like to sort of rewind a little bit. For some of our listeners who may have watched the series, I must admit, I have watched it. I didn't manage to get through it. It was very heavy for me. I managed 2 episodes. I've read up about it. What were your views upon watching it, Dr. Zaidi?
So, as a parent and as a service provider, as a psychologist, in both those roles, I found it a really heavy watch. I found it really, really difficult in so many different ways. But that doesn't mean that because it raised so many real questions and real topics, and it is the reality that is being portrayed. It is a really sad program where, because it is violent, there is a death involved. It's quite, aggressive in that way. And it was a really, really difficult watch. But then you've got to know that I prefer to watch very light-hearted kind of stuff. I usually avoid anything that is a little bit heavier than Ted Lasso. So that's my kind of go-to. But it was interesting to watch it with my children as well, but they're older. So my older one is 25 and my younger one, who's a boy, he's 18. And it was just interesting for us to watch as a parent, as a family, and be able to have those discussions. So it wasn't an easy watch by any means.
Absolutely. I think adolescence is really a time where actually teenagers often perhaps feel a bit isolated or maybe not understood by parents or peers. What sorts of challenges have you come across? What do people tell you about their children, or perhaps you actually work with young adults also?
Yes. So, I think I've said this before, which also shows my age, that, these days, teenagers, it's a difficult enough time as it is. You're trying to grapple with your identity. You're trying to find your place away from the home, your nuclear family, into what I am in the world, right? Who am I, and where do I belong? And therefore, they're trying to find their identity within their peer group. Now, with the peer group, it's the online identity and, in your real life identity. And it is a difficult time for them to be going through this. The pressures, with the complex social dynamics, which is obviously amplified by social media, and dealing with heightened academic expectations, uncertainty about their futures. So anxiety, depression, and struggles definitely with self-image are increasingly common, is what I'm finding. So it's all on the increase, and COVID obviously didn't help in shape or form. Yeah.
What about Jamie's sort of character journey, and how, I suppose it's about the emotional vulnerability. How can parents sort of use scenes from the miniseries, or maybe just by watching parts of it, how can it sort of spark the conversations about identity and also emotional expressions?
Right. So I think it's so good that you brought up the emotional expressions. Now, boys are unfortunately often boys, men. If you ask them, what are the emotions that you feel? More often than not, I've been told there are two, basically. There's not more than two. And it is, I feel okay or happy, or, I feel upset, frustrated, angry. So those are the two emotions. So, society almost promotes this, just the two lanes for these expressions of emotions. Whereas for women, we have a whole host of, expression of emotions. If you had to ask, and I'm not generalizing, but generally, I mean, I think it is the society kind of promotes lack of expression in emotions for the boys. So you see his struggle and you see his father's struggle when his father has tried to do so much better. He came through physical abuse when he was younger. And he has tried so hard not to go there, but he does get angry when he gets frustrated, and he doesn't take it out on somebody else, but he is expressing that anger through throwing things and breaking things. And what we need to get to, I think, is expression of emotion is okay. And when you feel angry, what is it really that's going on for you at that moment?
And when a young boy sort of sees that anger, yes, even though the anger is not inflicted on him physically, when you see the anger surrounding him in the house, he grows up with it. It's the norm. It's what he's grown up with.
Exactly.
I'm so glad you also brought up, that sort of range of emotions. So that's a sort of societal expectation, and then also sort of gender roles. What can parents do to challenge these norms, quote unquote norms?
Okay, so this is where I'm going to have to ask the dads, and the parent figures who are males, to be able to create a change for our next generation, that they are able to show more emotions and expressions of emotions and talk about emotions more openly. So when your son is on the playground and he has missed that ball, or he feels really upset in any of, he's missed the goal, or the team members are not being kind to him, it's okay for him to feel upset, and it's okay for him to cry, and you are there to support him, because it's not there's nothing wrong with being able to express that. It's not girly, it's not feminine, it's not weak. If you show the expression that you're upset, it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel excited. It's okay to feel rejected. It's okay to feel all of these variety of emotions. And you know what? It's temporary. It passes, and you're there to support them. That's okay. So give them the vocabulary. Show it yourself. That's the most important thing, I feel. That needs to change in the dynamics, right?
I wholeheartedly agree. And I sort of grew up in the generation of, you do hear words and phrases like just toughen up or man up, or even, in certain cultures, don't be sad, and just sort of brushing emotions. And sometimes these phrases are unfortunately targeted at perhaps young boys and young men. I mean, girls hear it too, but I think if a young little girl cries, I think there's a little bit more sympathy for, okay, well, that's okay. But whereas for boys, it's like, suck it up, don't, or maybe you even hear phrases like, don't be a girl.
Yes.
And equating these sorts of healthy expressions of emotions as to, quote unquote, being the weaker sex. And it isn't like that. It shouldn't
You and I
be.
both know. You and I both know in reality that's not the case, right? That
Because
those
I'll show you strong, a woman can be. Yeah.
Yes, that's not the reality in real life today. And even this is not the reality. Yet we give them a specific way to be a man, a specific way to be a strong man. Because if you express emotions, there is something wrong with you. So I think the modeling, and again, this is where the fathers, the men, the role models in the homes for these boys, for next generation, absolutely have to be able to create that space, because it's not easy for them. It's not easy for them
Yeah.
either. But unless we create that space, it's difficult.
Which brings me to the sort of next point, how can parents encourage this critical thinking and this critical evaluating of messages and social media about masculinity, and masculinity and success and what it means to be a boy? How can parents instill that resilience in the children?
Yeah. So, firstly, creating a space about what it is that portrayal of strength means. You and I are speaking about it right now. What is being strong? What does it mean? Because even in the program, Jamie is slightly shorter and he's being bullied for it. Girls at that age do, I mean, boys grow, have their growth spurts later, and girls are taller and bigger, maybe. And just being able to be aware of how boys or children are feeling about themselves, and being able to then create a space for what is strength, what is success, and does is it only kind of gendered, or is there more to it? Is there a whole host of things that rely on you becoming a good person and being a contributing member of the society? Is that based on, this masculinity and being able to assert that? I think we're past that kind of, but we need to bring our children with it, and we need to be able to have those conversations. We can't take it for granted that our kids will just imbibe it because that's what we understand. So it's about having a conversation about it, I feel.
Yeah. Just going back to what I knew this would happen, time really flies. We've got about 6 minutes left, but just going to the point, I know we're really sort of saying men also need to do positive role modeling. I would also say mums or female caregivers also can sort of embrace that, if your son or if the little boy in your life is more sensitive, that's okay. Because I think comments like from mums can also be hurtful, saying, you're a boy, you just need to be a bit stronger. I don't think, perhaps mums shouldn't really necessarily say that. And also, the woman can also be more supportive of the men in their lives, because I've also heard women say, oh, about their husbands or partners, oh, I wish you would just man up a little bit. I've also heard that before, and that also can be unhealthy and reinforces the the man sort of what he's grown up with as well. I don't know if you've also heard comments like that from the woman as well.
I agree. I agree 100% that there is, we have an expectation of what the man should be. And, I just had the stereotypical kind of man in my life. So I can speak about that I've had to teach the language of emotions. And because my son is unfortunately born or fortunately born in this home, he's had no choice but to have that vocabulary. But I can completely see where you're coming from. And yes, it does. I've absolutely heard that expression. I just wish you would man up. I just wish you would. And I do then question it. I said, what is it? I do ask, what is it that you mean by man up?
What does manning up mean? Exactly. And what does throw like a girl mean? Like comments like
Yes,
this is
exactly.
incredibly sort of,
And being aware of our language, I think is, you're absolutely right, is very, very important. So again, it goes back to, why do we use genders in that language, right? Why is it that, man up? What is it about being man up that's upsetting you? And it's usually, you just need to be able to help me more with planning or the admin tasks or being able to be present more. So it's not about being manning up, is it really? I feel.
agree. Absolutely. It's really about sort of the creation of the culture of empathy at home, so that when difficult topics like violence and mental health comes up, because
Yes.
it's bound to come out at some point during our children's lives, how can parents foster that culture of empathy and understanding?
Open communication, really important. Being vulnerable, showing vulnerability, showing that you are able to go through the emotional upset, and then there is something that, that you're able to come out of it, because that is a skill that they need to be able to learn. They're showing that resilience through adversity, that when you go through a difficulty, what are the steps that you go through, and part of it is the emotional upset,
Yeah.
and then you come to problem solving. You don't just jump to problem solving without that expression. It's easy. It's easy to put it away, but then it builds up, and this is what happens, right? Because there is a need for that, and somebody else can prey on it. So yeah.
Off topic slightly, we've got 3 minutes left, Dr. Zaidi. A lot of in Chinese there's a phrase, saying your parents give birth to you, but your friends teach you. Part of it is it becomes a cult. There are online influencers, like in the show that they allude, about, say, for example, Andrew Tate, and there are a lot of young men who really, even older men, who really buy into that concept of the manners sphere. How can you sort of change that mindset of young men who are very susceptible? Their minds are still developing. You can tell them that thinking is not right and whatnot, but if all their friends believe it, they're gonna try and believe what their friends believe also. It's so hard to sort of rip them away from that world.
Agree. So first step is actually not allowing that to happen in your home. So being aware of what's going on in your teen's life, being part of their online presence, as well as,
Yeah.
and making sure that they are spending enough time, outside with you and being able to talk to you. I know it's difficult. I do know it's
It's
difficult.
like, why are they spending so much time with said influencer
Yes,
few
yes.
hours a day rather than with the parents? And this is not a judgmental, when we're not blaming parents. We understand that parents are busy, but there needs to be someone to fill in that gap. Otherwise, somebody else will.
Agree. So being aware of that, I think, is the first part. And second part is that if you're noticing any change in your teenager, you have to just be aware of it and do something about it. Step in, intervene, and be present. Because once it's tipped over, it's difficult to bring them back and change that mindset. But again, of course you can, but you've got to spend a lot more time. I'll do the thing, yeah.
What are some of the signs that parents should look out for to see if the child is struggling? I mean, are teenagers quite good at hiding things? I don't know. Yeah, or are they?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. But your child. If you have spent with my younger one, he's going to hate me for sharing this, but sorry, it's his eyes. So when I am not in he would come back from school and it would be his eyes. He wouldn't say anything. He's not very. So it would be his eyes. So that it's just looking out for those small things that you know about your child. You know your child. So you have to be paying attention to them, especially in these adolescence years, right? And when they are exposed to so much out there. And the other thing is, honestly, I can't emphasize this enough, that please encourage them to spend time in a shared space. So they do their homework in shared space, because then it's less likely that they're going to be on these kind of forums. There is less, you're giving them less of a chance for a predator to prey on them, because if you can create that space in a high traffic zone, it's better. So things like that.
I think this warrants for a part two, definitely. Sort of,
Yes.
there's so much. We're scratching the surface, but really, really, I think that there's so much we can talk about in terms of exploring the complexities of youth culture, what goes on in a young mind. Dr. Quratulain Zaidi, thank you so much once again for being very generous with your time, and I look forward to our next chat. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.